Good morning from Japan, and good evening in the United States. I am Amy King, the visionary of Hey Single Ladies. And I just want to welcome you all on this morning as we talk about grieving the losses of virginity and singleness. I have Dr. Amanda Helman on the line with me, and we're going to get right into it. Just come on. I'll give you guys a few seconds to come on, see how you guys are doing. Drop your name in the comment section. Tell me where you're tuning in from. I'm here in Japan. Amanda, where are you located?
I am in Georgia, so Fayetteville, Georgia.
Oh, wow. She's in Georgia. Okay. I did not know that. I'm learning
Yeah,
something new.
I moved. I moved Pennsylvania to Georgia. Yep. hmm
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I'll let you guys come on in. Welcome to the show. I got some comments up for you guys. Welcome to those on Facebook. I'm streaming live on two platforms. I'm on Facebook Live and also on YouTube. So, while you guys come in, I will go over just a bit of things that I have for you guys. Number one, if you guys haven't been on to our Hey Single Ladies Facebook page, YouTube page, head on head over. I just uploaded some new YouTube videos. And I put that material out there for you guys. I recently just uploaded videos about the missionary trip I did to the Philippines, and I hope to inspire you if God has called you as a missionary to the nation. So go on over and subscribe. It is such a good place to be. And then I also want to let you guys know that this month, our theme we're going to be focusing on is the grieving the losses of virginity and singleness. And when you totally commit yourself to God, we will not have any sexual fulfillment because we're not in marriage and or children. And I was telling Dr. Amanda this before we actually came on live, that when I told my mom that this is the topic that I wanted to discuss, my mom, she said, Amy, you're speculating. I said, well, Mom, is it not true that I am not married? And because I'm not married, I am not being sexually fulfilled and I do not have any children. So I'm not saying that this is a permanent state. Do not be scared. Do not have fear. But as we're walking in this, these are the things that we're losing out on. And so it's grievous. It's grievous. And I found myself grieving. Sometimes I didn't know I was grieving. I had no clue I was grieving. No one told me that, hey, you're grieving. And you're grieving because of this. And if you mention it in the body of Christ, I don't think anyone even gives you permission, or no one even recognizes that the single people are grieving and why we're grieving and how to cope with it. It's usually like if you mention these things, it's like keep your mind on the Lord, and then that's it. But it's more to it than that, and God recognizes it. So we want to help you acknowledge that maybe you are grieving, and if you are, how you can cope in a healthy way. And then also we this whole month I have Dr. Amanda on with me, but for the rest next week we're going to have Melody Fox on. She's going to come on and talk to us, and next week I'll give you more information about her. And then August 19th, Friday, mark your calendars, we're going to have Aurora Gregory. And they both have been on the Hey Single Ladies Facebook live show as well, sharing their testimony about walking through the single season. But both of them have experienced losses as a result of being in the single season for so long. And they're going to come on and discuss those with you, and how God made it work together for their good. But now we have Dr. Amanda on, and Dr. Amanda, I'm just going to quickly introduce her so she can get right into helping us. So Dr. Amanda, this is her book that she has written. She's an author, uh, and I love her. She is also a cognitive release coach. She's my cognitive release coach. And she empowers men and women to use their voice through the process of healing, grief, and navigating adversity. She has her book. It's called No Longer Silent. You can go on Amazon and click and buy it, but you will get to hear her And I'll put her contact information down below as she talks. But I'm gonna let Amanda take the lead, and I'll be here, Amanda, if you have anything.
Sure. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Amy. And I'm excited about this platform and your passion to work with single ladies and also address hard topics, things that we don't talk about, as you mentioned. And one big area is grieving. Grief is a big area. So I want to talk about what is grief first, and then in the context of what does this look like for single ladies who may not be married, or perhaps you were married and you were widowed, right? Now you're single. We don't talk about that either, as well as if you're a virgin and you're waiting for your time, right? For that, as Amy says, sexual fulfillment, and also no children. Those are a lot of different griefs, and that may look different for each person, but grief is the same and it impacts our body the same way, although we may not recognize it. So I'll be sharing that as well. So the first thing is grief. What is grief? Grief is when we are mourning, right? We're in a state of mourning, our body, mind, soul, spirit. And our spirit, yes, we have our spirit, right, which is seated in the heavenly places, but we still are impacted here by things that happen. And so grief is really the impact, the realization of a loss, mourning, feeling sad. And it's realizing that there may be a loss in your life or something that you want and it's not happening right now. And I also want to say about emotional grief. That's when we have these feelings and they're impacting us because they're stuck inside. For example, think about if you have a soda, right? And then you shake it and all of a sudden it fizzes. Well, that happens to us, but we don't often know what to do with it. So we sort of just keep trying to not allow the emotional grief out. And emotional grief is almost like, it just consumes you. And it happens across generations where we learn from our family how to grieve, or sometimes we learn not to say anything, right? For example, in the case of grieving losses, we talk a lot about relationships, but when it comes to single ladies, and people who may have had widowship where they had that, or even being a virgin, it all looks different. For example, if you're waiting for marriage and there's some great things to it, but you may not have ever experienced that, you're still grieving, right? It's almost like the Proverbs that hope deferred makes the heart sick. And so that happens for people who are waiting in virginity and maybe they've never had any sexual experiences. And sometimes the church, right, like that's like always a focus, but it's looking at how am I feeling and honestly saying, yeah, I would like to have a relationship, but I'm still waiting for that right person. And so grieving can be for a season, but it can be painful. If you have other friends that are marrying, other people that are getting married or in relationships, you might feel sadness or feel a sense of loss, or sometimes it might be like, well, what's wrong with me? Which is often what happens even in grief, right? Like, what could I have done differently? And that can lead to a sense of sorrow, right? If we get into that perception. We can also have grief if you waited. So for example, for me, there was a time where I had the virginity, but even in my book, I talked about being in relationships, but they weren't really the God-ordained relationship for me. And, so now in the last 10 years, I've been in a state of, purposeful, right, intentional, new virginity, based on like what God's done in my life. And, but there's times where my heart is, right, I want to have children, I want to have a family, I'm family oriented. And there are times even when I watch movies, and perhaps some of you might agree, where I start to cry. I did that in April. I was like, oh my gosh, like I so want to have a family and kids, right? And knowing God's timing. And so that fulfillment of family, right, of relationship has been there. And so, yes, in the church, we talk about like relationships. We don't talk about what it's like to walk in your singlehood. So on a good thing, even with grief, I had to learn how to grieve, but then also learn what does it mean to have hope? Even when I'm sad, even when I'm not experiencing that, how do I still hold on to hope? How do I start learning to love me, right? What do I want? How do I date myself? How do I learn, right, how to navigate through grief and learn how I can be joyful and hopeful for my future, and also grieve, right, and allow myself to feel when I'm sad and waiting, and knowing that both are okay. And even when I go to weddings, I'm okay with being happy for the people, right? But I also could be mourning that it's not my time yet. It's not a state of envy or a comparison. So I want you all to just be encouraged that when we're grieving, it looks differently for each of us. And so what I want to talk about next are signs for grief. And it can look different for people, but it's also a state of what happened in your family. So for example, different cultures may say, nope, you got to just never talk about it, right? So there are some cultures where people don't talk about them feeling sad about not having a relationship, or there's shame. So there's shame on top of grief for different families or people. And so what happens then is that we learn how to just hold things in. So what are some signs of grief? Well, they're going to look different. So you'll be surprised because I'm going to talk about it in a broader lens that brings up many different people and how they're grieving. So when it looks at grief, it could be muscle aches. You may feel more achy in your body because you have emotions of sadness or grief that are not being released. I help people walk through that process. It might be more inflammation. You might feel more tired. There might be some backaches. Backaches specifically in your body for aches is a sign of like lack of emotional support or feeling not supported, or you might feel alone. You might feel angry. Perhaps you might feel like more anger and you're not sure why, right? Or perhaps there's shame because you're just not sure what's going on, or you're feeling that and part of your grief. Also, it could be some signs of depression, or maybe you're sleeping longer because you're really feeling that hope deferred, where you just don't have hope that something better is going to happen. You might feel more anxious. That means just in your body. Sometimes we don't realize how anxious we are, about the future. You're worrying about the future or thinking, are things ever going to change? You could have loss of friendships. So maybe you're distancing yourself from people because in the distancing, it's just hard to see yourself. Sometimes you just don't want to be around your friends, or feel like you're the third wheel, or feel like, okay, it's another family event and they're going to ask me about a relationship, or they're going to ask me about it. And you don't always want to talk about what you're thinking or how you're really feeling. It might be a lack of excitement. Maybe you're losing personal interest in maybe going to the gym, or doing things you love because you're so grieving. You're grieving the loss of this fulfillment. And sometimes, like even in our grief, we may want to do things that are unhealthy coping skills, right? Maybe with our eating, or struggling, right? Even to keep, what is healthy for me in my grief, or you want sexual fulfillment. And then there's also those temptations to do things, right, that might do that in the interim. And we don't talk about that either, right? Like how do you stand firm, and like, how do we stay with, in that relationship with God, but also we're sexual beings, right? God created that in us. And so how do we navigate that? And there can be grief in that, or shame that we're even grieving that, but it's a real thing. Sometimes there may be just shifts in your personal care, because you're like, who's really going to talk with me? And so sometimes we forget just to dress up for yourself, right? How can I dress up for myself? How can I enjoy myself? And learning who you are as a person, right? Even in this time. Because sometimes the grief consumes us, and then we forget who we are. We start to forget the amazing person that you are in your singlehood. And the surprising things is that when we are grieving blockers, I'll talk about some blockers of grief, are when you decide, sometimes you're overwork, right? People work because we want to avoid feeling grief. We don't know how to process grief. We don't know how to release it from our body, which those are all possible. We can actually shift that. We also sometimes just shut down, where you might just be doing nothing, right? We're just watching TV. We're avoiding tasks. We're avoiding looking at ourselves. We're avoiding recognizing our grief. And so those things could be blockers, or, we're overworking, we're too busy. We're doing other things. We consume our time in other areas to try to compensate for the areas that are dear to our heart. And I've been there. So all these things are not new to me. These are some ways that these signs look different. And so now we're thinking about what is actually healthy grief. And I call it healthy grief. What does that look like? And so I think it's important to have healthy grief, and healthy grieving is intentional. It's intentional time that you set aside and that you check in. How am I feeling? What's going on in my body? Am I doing regular activities? Am I overworked? And some tips for healthy grief seem simple, but it's actually sitting down, taking that pause, and even praying and asking God and saying, God, what is going on in my heart? Why am I, I'm sad? And even having honest conversations, writing it down. Like, what am I feeling? Maybe I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling hopeless in this area. I'm embarrassed. I don't know who to talk to. Processing your true thoughts. A lot of times, even in church or in different groups, people say, nope, I can't say anything negative. That's going to mean make it be a curse. No, it's not true. You actually have to get to your root thought. When you get to the root thinking and emotions you're feeling, that is a relief for your body. Your body's finally like, thank goodness, right? It's like opening up a fresh soda if you drink it, or Fresca, and all of a sudden, poof, all that air comes out. That's what we're doing. We want to identify, where are you needing grief? Where do you need to grieve? And so we also then take notice of your environment. Take notice around you. Is there a lot of unorganization? Because a lot of times in our bodies, how we're feeling, it reflects our environment. And usually it reflects what's going on inside of us. So if we are not taking that time, we're sitting. Maybe we're even just asking God. Maybe we have music on. Maybe I'm even just allowing myself to start crying, to start feeling, to start acknowledging where I'm at. And it's an honest place. So you actually have to be honest with where you're at when you grieve. And we also look at what's fun for you. So with grief, sometimes we don't want to do some things, but what fills up your cup? And so doing that is also a balance with grieving. For example, in some of my, single seasons, or even walking through, I didn't think that I could have a balance. I thought that I had to just mourn and weep and cry all day long, and I didn't deserve to have any fun. And so when we start doing healthy grief, we recognize I can have some time for my grieving. I can allow my heart to release. I can allow my body to cry, to feel that sadness, but I can also have time for fun. So yes, here's my time of grief, and now I'm going to go take a walk. Now I'm going to go outside, and I can actually have a healthy balance. And also recognize that healthy grief happens every day. I know that sounds wild. So even as singles, or if you're in widowhood, or any of those things, we are both women and men who mourn and have joy every day. And so healthy grief is just acknowledging how you're feeling in those situations. And then also it's okay to have get support for your mental health. A lot of times we think we can do things alone, and it's important to know how to process. It's important to take time to do that. But I would say that 95% of all of my healing, all of my breakthrough, any of the release I've had has been with other people as well. Coaches, mental health coaches, mental health therapists. In my lifetime, I have had different people. Yes, you can have friends. It's important to have friends who support you, but that's different than therapy, right? Having friends that support you, and then also going to deeper roots as to what are you believing about yourself in your grief or in your singleness is also important. And so I want you to think about that. And so as we're going into this last part, we talked about what is grief, what's emotional grief, what does that look like for us? Also then looking at what are the signs of grief? What are some things we do to avoid it? The blockers. And then we're looking at healthy grief. What are some examples of how we can work through this in a healthy way? I want to encourage you. When I went through some really big seasons of in the last 10 years, God gave me 2 Corinthians 11:2. And that was God teaching me that he's my husband, right? How does he as a man, how is he in my life? And then how am I, right, to show up, and also to learn how to love myself, how to be in his presence. And even when I'm in pain, go to him, because he knows the desires of our heart. And a lot of times in our singleness and in our grief, we try these other coping skills. I've done it. And what happens is it's really truly knowing, like, how is my relationship with God? How is my relationship with myself? And in this time, it's a beautiful blessing to be single. I am not the woman I was 10 months ago. I'm not the woman I was a week ago. Because I put in time with the grieving season, because I continue to have time with my intentional for myself and in the healing, and also enjoy, it's made me a better person, preparing, right, for the future, preparing for, that future person that's going to run with me. But I'm grounded in, right, who God is, who he says I am, and who I am. However, there were very painful times where not everybody knew how to walk this. And 10 years, not everybody might do that, right? You might be having hope when you might be at a different age. I'm 42, so I walked this out in 10 years. All of us have had different history. My encouragement to you is that there is hope. And when you don't feel hopeful, have people in your life who will understand, who will just listen to you. And you could even say, hey, I just need to listen to you, or I'm really sad. Having people who can empathize with you, cry on your shoulder when needed to, and even laugh with you, right? Watching funny movies, or having hope, and like having people who can encourage you, but also sit with you when you're feeling sad. But I would say now, because I've learned how to process grief and healthy grief and know what I used to go to, I am a better person, and I'm preparing myself for great things for my children, for marriage, even though it's not here. And God says, like hope, faith is waiting for the promise without it being here. And even in it, we can all relate to one another, even as humans, even though we might be waiting for all these things and our children. The one thing we can all know is that every season there are some grief, right? There's hard things that happen in our lives. And so it brings us back to God. And in that, we're also growing. And in that, we become who he's always destined us to be. And then we have a healthy relationship. So your healthy relationships come with you learning how to grieve, you breaking generational patterns of avoiding grief. And if you don't know how, certainly I do a lot of cognitive release coaching. And a lot of that is head to toe release of grief, because a lot of times we don't realize how much grief that we carry and how much God wants us to release it, and what that looks like, and how we don't have to be in grief all day long. And sometimes you might feel more sad, but also know you deserve the good days as well. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions about what I've talked about, or Amy, if you have any other questions, I'd love to answer. And I thank you for your time.
Oh my goodness. Can you hear me, Amanda?
I can hear you.
I'm coming back onto the screen right now. I did not want this to end.
Oh, you're listening.
Oh my goodness. That was so good. This is what we needed. Like, this is what we need. I felt very safe with you. I felt very safe. And I pray that all the single women, those that are widowed, I felt so safe.
That's important. That's important.
Yes, I felt safe. I felt like, I can go and get the help that I need. And I'm praying that the other single women that hear this, that they get the help that they need, because we don't realize just how much grief we are carrying. And and that's exactly why I'm doing this, because like I've been walking with the Lord for 9 years, but I haven't had one person come and sit down and tell me, hey, it's okay to grieve the losses of singleness and virginity and even the widows. I haven't seen anyone, and I'm not saying no one is not doing that, but I've been in a lot of groups and I just haven't seen it. And so I am so grateful to have had you on the call. Like, I didn't have to ask any questions because you expounded very well on every topic. Good. And I was able to identify, even for myself, some takeaways that I need help in. So I've gotten, so far, I've gotten far along, but there's still some places that I need help in. And I pray that everyone that was listening, that you can identify what you may need help in. This was such a safe place. So I am going to show Dr. Amanda I put it in the comment box, but this is her contact information. If you would like to schedule a time to meet with Dr. Amanda with cognitive release coaching, that's her email address, info@amandahelman.com. You can also reach out to me through the Hey Single Ladies Facebook messenger. I can give you her information. And I want you guys to know that as the visionary of this ministry, like I started this ministry and I asked the Lord, I was like, Lord, you know that I'm not perfect. Why would you choose me to do this? Why would you choose me to do this? And I'm going along with it. I have a lot to offer, but I also want to add to that this is the year that I've decided that, you know what, I need more help than I realize. And I reached out to Dr. Amanda, and I told her, I was like, I need more help than I realize. You know, I've gotten along this far, and God has helped me, and He is helping me. But I think I need to get some more help. And so that's what I'm doing for my year 34. I'll be turning 34 in a few more weeks. And that's something I'm so proud of. Excuse me, I am like actually shedding tears over here. But
wow.
This was just so moving. Oh my goodness. Did I?
I love it. Look at, and vulnerability is so good. So,
yes,
so look at that. I'm going to give kudos to Amy. Part of, you know, vulnerability is a sign of strength. It means that we're healing. So Amy, I know, you know, sometimes we don't realize when we cry, but it's such a beautiful thing. So I just want to encourage you with saying, as you're crying, that's a healing, you know, it's a healing. It's a vulnerability, and your audience is watching that. And it is, you know, it's a beautiful thing. And I'm glad that, you know, your heart was touched and there is hope. So thanks for sharing that you were crying, because I wouldn't have known, but it's beautiful for your audience and myself to know. And if I were crying, I told you I would totally cry. I'm just not crying right now, but I totally can relate.
And I feel so confident knowing that, like, we can do this. Like, we can go and tell someone I'm grieving. I feel anxious about the future. I don't think God is going to give me, I don't want to be alone. I want to be married, you know, and not have to have that same Christian response. Just focus on the Lord. And then I'm left right there with grief in my heart.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt for years. And I don't think there was anyone, I have no one in my mind that I have maybe one or two that I would probably tell that to, but I don't think that there's many people out there that's walking in relationship with Jesus that have anyone that they feel like they can say that to. And so I'm just so grateful, and I pray that, you know, God moves the heart of people to reach out, whether it's to you or maybe they know another mental health counselor or cognitive release coaching, but don't be afraid to get help for this grief that's associated with the losses of singleness and virginity. I know God wants to help all of us. He is helping us. But it's just, I have to rewatch this. And I'm so grateful. I am so grateful. And like I said, as the leader of Hey Single Ladies Ministries, just know that I'm getting help because I grieve the losses of virginity and singleness. And I'm just being totally transparent and vulnerable with you. I have moments when I do.
Yeah.
And so thank you guys for tuning in. I pray this call bless you. Do you have any last words, Amanda, Dr. Amanda?
Well, thank you, Amy. And again, thank you for your vulnerability. Yes. And yeah, if you have any questions, let us know. I would love to answer them. You know, again, make sure you're with safe people. Not everybody's going to understand. And sometimes it's a topic that, right, in family or people, no one really knows how to unpack, but make sure you have people who can hear you, right? You have safe people, you have community, right? Just even like Amy's addressing some of these topics as single ladies, and it's needed. It's needed. It's not a stigma. You know, nothing's wrong with you. You're incredible women, and God is doing something in all of us as we're waiting. And but even in that's not always easy. But just be encouraged that you're not alone, that other people may be thinking these things, and that it's okay. It's okay to have these questions, to have these feelings. You're a human being, and God hears that, and He understands, and He has a heart for you. So again, my hope is that you do, like Amy said, get support. You know, reach out to me, whoever is that God is bringing you to in this season. As long as you get help to learn how to have those healthy conversations and know that you're not alone.
Yes. Okay. Thank you guys once again for tuning in. We will catch you guys next week, Friday, the same time. Guys, don't forget to share this video with a friend, a single lady friend, even the friend that tells you, I don't want to hear any of that. That's for you. She needs to hear this.
Mhm.
All right. She needs to hear this. But most of all, make sure you take a hold of it and take those tips that Dr. Amanda shared with us. I'll
Mhm.
see you guys again next week with Melody Fox at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy.
Bye.
Bye.